Problem.
Give me 1 second. I'm figuring out this Zoom thing as well.
Yeah, it's pretty new to me.
All right.
Yeah.
Where you live at, Aaron?
I am currently in Portland, Oregon.
Okay.
I moved here.
There we go. I found it.
I moved here about a year and a half ago. Up until then, I lived in San Francisco. I lived in the Bay Area for many years. I've also lived in New York in the 90s and again in 2003 to 2005. Where are you right now?
I'm here in Miramar, Florida.
Okay.
Yeah, nice, and I get back home to Philly before the pandemic. Actually, up there almost every month, doing education through sports clinics right in the inner city. A matter of fact, where your father was raised at Haddington Recreation Center, where we were all raised at in West Philly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very cool. So did you guys ever actually play together, or you were always on different teams?
Well, I need to give you a story about it.
So Wally, let me do this. Let me give the introduction and kind of get us all there, and then have you guys continue engaging in an organic, authentic conversation. But I want to be able to at least open up, tell the story, and kind of go from there. So this is, this is really something I'm trying to find the word to really express. I mean, it is organic. But this is special. It's a special moment when we're connecting two individuals. Yourself, Aaron, I had the chance to come across your story. I read the article in Sports Illustrated. I'm not sure if I think I more read the article. I didn't see it in terms of anybody on the news or anything like that. And I reached out to you, and a few weeks later, you connected. And then, while that was happening, at the same time, Wally was, we've been working together for all these years. And, we're in the midst of a lot's been going on Wally's side. And, just everything going on in our country is really representative of Wally and what he had to go through back in the day with your dad. So for everybody out there, just, the students call me Pro Skills. This is our Behind the Influences segment. And this is going to be our segment where I'm able to connect, Wally Jones, Wally Wonder Jones, NBA champion, community activist, leader in his own right, with Aaron Levy. And Aaron, I need for your side what the story said, and this is the story. You found out that the late Wilt Chamberlain was your father. That was the story, but there's so much more to it. And Wally, the reason why I thought for sure you'd want to speak with Wally, and I brought it up to Wally, and Wally still talks to the Chamberlain family. He'll tell you all of that in a little bit, but we wanted to make sure, right, that everything was what it was. It wasn't, so I did a little bit of the homework. The article said, and I believed everything that came of it, but I wanted to at least reach out to you, and I was so excited when your first message was, because the article said something along the lines of that you hadn't yet been accepted by the Chamberlain family at that time. And then you came back and told me, since that was written, you ended up connecting with all the Chamberlains, and I knew Wally met them. So we'll start there. So Aaron, man, Professor Craig Skilling, nice to finally formally meet you. And I'm introducing you formally to Wally Wonder Jones, a very good friend, knows your dad very well. And, guys, that's the start of my role. Tell us a little bit about the story, Aaron, that happened in your own words for Wally to hear. And then let's kind of bring it present day. And then you guys just catch up.
All right. Well, so much has happened since that article. It sounds like you got the article on the late side. It's actually 6 years ago in March that it came out. So I can't give you every detail of what happened right after that, but basically I started hearing from a few of my cousins, and one in particular, Jasmine Chamberlain, who is a second cousin, ended up doing a DNA test with me, and it was positive. I knew it would be. And then a little later, I did another DNA test with Barbara's son, Lamont. And it's such a it's a bizarre situation to be in for anyone. and for them, you know, they have no idea who I am. I'm a stranger, you know, and so I understood their hesitation. But it's 6 years later, you know, we are getting to know each other, and it's great. You know, they're family to me, and I still haven't met all of them in person. I've met a couple. I've met Lamont. I've met my Aunt Barbara and Jasmine and Oliver, cousin Oliver. But you know, it's been fantastic for me. You know, as an adoptee, you hope to make connections with people, but it doesn't always work out that way. You know, people are not always receptive to meeting a stranger, even if they are technically related to you. So it's been very touching to me that they have accepted me. I met my Aunt Barbara a few years ago in Colorado. She was kind enough to give me this, which is a little packet of photos of my father and I mean, he had so many brothers and sisters, you know, my aunts and uncles. They're all gone except for two. And so she, you know, at least with this cheat sheet, I can know exactly who they are and, you know, when they were born and when they passed and all that. And, you know, I'm slowly getting to know the family. We had a Zoom Chamberlain reunion a few months ago, and that was a, you know, real trip for me. It was incredible. That was the first time some of the people were seeing me, you know, face to face, even though it's on a TV screen or computer screen.
So Barbara is Wilt's sister.
Barbara is Wilt's sister. She is, I guess, 1 year younger than he would have been. Okay. And from what I've heard, they were just very close. And she really is kind of, you know, the person in the family now who really knows the most about him and really kind of does all his affairs and stuff. And she's hilarious. She's a trip. You know, she's just really fun. She talks a mile a minute, and she's very sweet. Yeah.
Wow.
Really
well, I'm sure Wally can attest to that as well. Wally, in your eyes, and kind of bringing you into this and being able to connect with Aaron right now in this moment, what are you feeling, Wally?
Well, first off, there's a white thing on the screen where I can't see Aaron or you. It's just black. It's blocking you out. But I wanted to be able to see him so he could. It's a white screen.
I can see you. Yeah.
Yeah, we're seeing you. Is it something that you have to maybe? Do you think you have to?
It says this meeting is being recorded. That's what it says on there.
Okay, but are you able to see both of us?
Oh, I can see, and we can.
You might have to click the button. You might have to click the button to say that you agree to
that could be right.
Yeah, just click OK.
So if you see something that you can click OK, Wally?
I don't see anything. Should I press continue?
Yeah, press continue.
Just press continue.
And then it will get rid of the box.
Good.
There you go. Thank you, Aaron.
Sure.
Yeah.
Here we go in real time. So Wally, you're seeing us. You're seeing us over here. We're seeing Aaron. We've had this conversation, you know, leading up to being able to meet Aaron. And Aaron, just for purposes to let you know, on our side, we are co-authoring Wally's autobiography. So so all of all of these experiences are culminating, but we're talking about his body of work and everything that he's experienced, things that are going on in terms of social justice. And you've seen the athletes movement. Wally had an opportunity himself to really be a part of that in the very beginning. And I want to share some of those things. But first, Wally, I just want you to, at least in this moment, you're meeting Aaron. This is Wilt's son, not just your teammate. This is Wilt from Philly. This is Wilt, the Chamberlain family that you're familiar with. What are you feeling right now at this moment, Wally?
Well, Aaron, that's why I wanted to see Aaron, so I could explain to him what it means to me as a man. You are family. And see, I was raised in West Philadelphia. I'm from a family of 9, and Wilt Chamberlain's from West Philadelphia High. So his family, we're close to everybody. We grew up in the same neighborhood, but we went to the same high school. So I have an older brother who played at the same high school, Overbrook, raised and played with Wilt. He didn't play on those championship teams at Wilt in high school, but right after Wilt, my brother played. One of the things in our neighborhood was a closeness of family is that even after he was in college and then played pro ball, he reached back to all the ball players that played at Overbrook High School to be student athletes. So he was at our games. But what made it more personal to me was I would go to Haddington Recreation Center and I would watch the pros with Walt Hazard, who actually was recruited out of Maryland Eastern Shore after winning a championship in ninth grade. He was going to go to West Philadelphia High School, which was our rival school. Walt Hazard is my best friend. Walt Hazard met Wilt Chamberlain, and Wilt Chamberlain convinced him to go to Overbrook High School.
Okay, wow.
Now, that's quite a rivalry with it, but Wilbur, Oliver, Barbara, all Wilt's sisters, and even his sister, Claude Gross's wife, Claude Gross.
Yeah.
Say her name again?
Selena.
Yeah, Selena and I, to show you how family are, I communicate with Barbara. I called her on her birthday just recently. She's a Capricorn.
Right.
She's had an affection for my father, who's a Capricorn. They talk to each other maybe once or twice a month. My father's 104.
Oh, wow.
So his history of knowing your family is way before I knew the Wilt Chamberlain family. Because a lot of the ball players would go to Wilt Chamberlain's house after the games and eat. His mother was very close in the community by incorporating all the ball players. Now, I'll give you an instance. Selena married a basketball player, Claude Gross, who was a competitor of Wilt.
Yep.
Barbara married a ball player who was also a Globetrotter. There's another sister that married a ball player that played for Overbrook, Jean Taylor. I can't recall her name. The reason why I'm tying this all in because the family was part of the community, but most of his sisters married ball players, and they were outstanding ball players. Yeah. Now with me, I'm a little younger, but I was able to see ball players that played with me at Overbrook High School that followed Wilt on to Kansas. Example, Wayne Hightower, who was 6'10", he was considered the next Wilt Chamberlain. What I mean that is at Overbrook, it had another guy that was tall, that was big, that won championships like Wilt. We were 84-4 in high school. Our school was half Jewish American and African American. Wow. So our community were tied in very closely with the Jewish community. We were the Hilltoppers. So right across Winfield, where mostly the Jewish American ball players lived, and we were on the other side, which is West Philly. So the connection with Wilt was when we were in high school, he would always return and see us play against the rival school, West Philadelphia High School, which had another big man, Chink Scott, who was considered the next Wilt. He's the next 6'10" guy who later I played for and played with in the Baker League, but I also played on the Detroit Pistons when I was out of the NBA. So the reason why I'm giving you a little background about family, you are family, because I know those. Give you an example. Delina's daughter, Michelle, who is Claude Gross's daughter, is now working with the group I work with called, it's the Philadelphia Black Sports Hall of Fame. And there are sons of ball players who work with her to help ball players, male and female, who are not doing well financially. In other words, health problems. Right. She's like a young lady that's sort of a lady in the community that reaches out to people who are not doing well, and they create money to help ball players that are not doing well. Or there's a young lady from Temple that just had an operation that they gave money to. So one of the things that brought us close was 2 years ago, they unveiled the Wilt Chamberlain statue at Camden where their office is. So all the family was there. And I have pictures that as soon as I get your number, I will send you pictures
Oh, I'd
of
love to see those. Yeah.
the family. Now, prior to that, they had a Wilt Chamberlain stamp unveiled. Ball players from New York. You have a stamp?
Oh yeah.
Well,
I get a bunch of those.
My father's there at the luncheon. They asked me to get up. I went to the table where the whole Chamberlain family. I mean, I grabbed all of them. My father was there, my best friends, ball players that he played against in New York came down and spoke. But I spoke of the importance of not only the stamp that has the Lakers, but also the Philadelphia 76ers.
Right.
But I mentioned that he was more known, and I'm going to give you something that's very important. He played with the Globetrotters. And I said there should be a stamp with the Globetrotters because he may be in the NBA, but people don't know he was worldly known because he traveled the world as a Globetrotter.
Absolutely.
Now, here's a significant thing to me. He was a Renaissance man. He's very intelligent. The things that happened to him in Kansas when blacks were not even allowed to eat in restaurants. I'm going to give you examples of why it ties into my activism because I know what he went through in Kansas. I have a son that went to Kansas State. That's much later. But I'm giving you a background of how history was in reference to race relations and what was happening to him in Kansas and what happened to players that I played with after him that went to Kansas that they told me stories of Kansas. One of the things that really helped me a lot was he was a person that would pull the whole community together. He was an outspoken person. You could talk to him like a man on the street. Now, I always thought he was a Leo, my opposite. I'm Aquarius, but he's a Virgo. And he's very analytical. So a lot of conversations were in reference to his knowledge was worldly because he was all over the world. It was all over the world. So it was interesting when we get around him and other ball players that were older, like Woody Salisbury, who went to, I think, a historical black college, Andy Johnson. They talked about what they went through as African Americans when they traveled the South, or when they played overseas, or what they went through being some of the first African Americans to play in the NBA. So a lot of things in that. In his community, Walt Hazzard and I, as high school ball players, we'd go to Huntington and we would stand outside the gate and watch some of the greatest basketball players that played from New York and Philly, HBCU. Their names of ball players that are world-renowned names. Art Powell, who was a Raider, who was a football player. Clarence Peaks was an Eagle. So there were actual football players that competed on Huntington Recreation Center. So I was raised there. The thing that happened at Huntington, my brother would take me up on a Saturday. Here is pressure. You go up, there's maybe 30 ball players sitting on the sideline. If you lose, you got to wait all afternoon to get back on the court. So the pressure that Walt Hazzard and I talk about was the pressure playing in a rec center where we would see Wilt. We would see Guy Rogers, who played with him with the Warriors, Al Attles. Al Attles is a name because he's in San Francisco.
Oh yeah, I know Al, yeah.
Well, Al Attles is like this. Al Attles and my brother played at North Carolina A&T. So when I went to A&T at 15, I never experienced a white fountain. You had to sit in the top of a movie. My mother, my cousin, and my father drove to see my brother when I was 15. And we went to eat, and they had a guy cutting onions in the kitchen. And my mother said, I'm not going to eat no kitchen. Well, my brother and Al Attles were one of the first to sit in at Woolworths. They were spit on. They were ostracized. So I'm a 15-year-old kid, first time going down south to Greensboro, and I seeing all these signs, white fountain. You can't go to movie. You can't eat here. And that's sort of why I got more involved with that. But that's giving you a background of ball players that he played with that were going to HBCU schools and what they had to go through as African Americans at that age. Because he's I'm 78. I think Wilt would have been 80, 82 maybe. I'm not
84.
84 maybe.
84, yeah.
84.
Wow. This year, yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Now,
So Aaron, what is that when you hear, I mean, you can kind of get a sense that all these guys coming up after Wilt, they were looking up to him. You know, Wally's telling you, he was that type of guy that he was the one to get in, and he kind of made it. So you've probably heard a lot of these stories, but
I've read most of the books, or probably all the books, but it's kind of different to hear it from someone who lived it as well. And I mean, I always got the sense that people were drawn to him and attracted to him. I know what it's like just being, I mean, I'm a humble 6'5", and for whatever reason, people, they always want to comment on your physicality. Oh, you're so tall. Do you play basketball? I got that my whole life. So someone who's over 7'1", I imagine you can't walk down a street without people staring at you, trying to engage you in a conversation. And I always got the sense that he enjoyed that, and that he, as liked to talk to people, liked to interact, and
yes, he was.
So Aaron, on your side, you were adopted. Tell us a little bit about your adopted family and that moment where, as a grown adult, you were just yearning for more, and you started down this path of wanting to know more about your biological parents.
Well, it's funny you bring up or that Wally brings up the fact that this was a lot of Jewish people in the school as well. I was actually adopted by a Jewish couple. My mother couldn't physically have children, so they adopted all, their kids. And it was the mid-'60s, and my sister Naima, it's like me. She's born in the same hospital that I was born in. She had a black father and a white mother. They adopted her, and about a year later, the agency was looking to place me. I was in foster care for 6 months, and they remembered the Levi family, and they called my parents and said, "We have a child that we think would be perfect for your family." So I was adopted, and then they adopted 2 other kids who were also Black. So I had white parents and Black brothers and sisters, and I knew they always, from the very beginning, some of my earliest memories are of them telling me that I was adopted, and that they were my parents now, and all that.
How old were you when you were adopted?
I was 6 months old. I was 6 months old when I was adopted. Yeah.
Aaron, that's interesting.
Yeah. So I have 6 months of foster care. It's not clear where I was, but this agency worked really hard to find me a home. And so I knew all my entire life that I was adopted, and I always planned to, I knew my mother was white, my father was Black, and the one thing that was always, I knew that my father was very tall. Apparently, the people at the adoption agency said, "We don't know much about the father except that he is over 6'9". So we need to tell you that the child might be very, very tall, ultimately." So I knew that. So I always kind of had this vision in my head that I had a tall Black father. Little did I know. And, I knew that it wasn't something I could do as a kid or a teenager. That I moved from Oregon to San Francisco to go to art school. And, of course, now I kick myself for not starting that process back then. But when I did get to California, what I heard was, "Oh, the books are closed. So you can't do that. You can't just get your birth parents' names." So I kind of put it on the back burner for quite some time. And it wasn't until my brother did the process, and he was born in Oregon, so it was easier for him. He could just, after 18, he could very easily just get his mother's name, and he did. And that's when I started saying, at this point, I'm in my late 30s, and that's when I started the process myself. So, it was a little late for me to meet Wilt, because by that time he had already died. So, I have a lot of regrets about that, but it's just the way it happened. And that's why, moments like this are really important to me, because I can learn more about him. I mean, you can read the books, I can see his image. I'm very lucky compared to some adoptees. Some adoptees, all they want to do is see a picture of their birth parents, and they may never get that opportunity. I can read about him. I can see footage of him doing what he did best. I can see him act in a movie. I can hear him sing. I only recently heard his single.
Yeah.
And now I have, family members who can tell me about him. But yeah, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of regrets about not doing this sooner. And I meet people. Shockingly, I still meet people who were adopted and are still kind of dragging their feet about the process of searching for their birth parents. And of course, I just say, take my word for it. It's not easy. There can be some negative things that come out of it, but don't wait too long, because you might wait, too long and not have a chance after that.
So Aaron, I gotta tell you, in hearing everything, and I can only imagine what you were going through just as a man, and that journey to self-discovery. But I love to call these episodes, behind the influencer. And you hear this word influencer, and we all think social media. That's not what it's about. It's about what you're doing to make a difference in your world. So all of us right now that we see on the screen, we're all influencers in our own right. And you're setting an example for somebody else that may be thinking about doing that. So
I hope so.
I know you have that regret, but brother, I mean, it happened when it was supposed to happen. And I can only imagine.
That's how I feel.
Even myself, I'm always, I'm blessed to have both of my parents still with me. And, I'm always trying to get more. I'm trying to find out more about where they're from and going on, because I need to share that with my boys. And I hear the right way. Wally is fortunate to have his father with us, and he's chronologically gifted. He'll tell you, and he goes down and he'll break down all these things, and we're documenting it. But so I can imagine for you in that journey. So you get this point where you now find out that your mom, who your biological mom was, your birth mom, and what is that moment? If you can kind of share that, if you'd like.
Well, these are the parts of the conversation that I edit a bit, because if you read the article, my birth mom is someone who, this experience is very different for her than it was for me. And, she doesn't want to be known as the one person who had a child with this man. And it's been very hard for me to navigate my desire to talk about my discovery of my birth father, and to respect her wishes of not wanting to be known for this. And so I don't really talk about her, but basically...
But you got to meet her, didn't you?
I did get to meet her. I've met her twice, and she is a lovely person. I would like to be closer to her, but I kind of have to follow her lead with what she wants.
So just I want Wally, because Wally didn't have a chance to kind of go through the article, but to bring him up to speed on that. So Wally, he found out, discovered, and I believe she's from overseas somewhere.
Yeah, she's European. Yeah, she's
European.
British. But this is even that she didn't want me to tell people, and it's too late, because I did say that in the article. But that was something to me that I didn't feel that I could go through the rest of my life being coy about. I couldn't very well be like, oh yeah, she's from Europe. I mean, it's a huge continent. you know. And for me, being a child of someone who is British is actually quite an interesting thing, because I was so and still am very attracted to British culture. But it's, you know, it's difficult. I know, you know, that for her, you know, I really don't know all of what she went through, but I do feel like probably it has something to do with the times, you know, a mixed race, having a mixed race child in the 60s. I guess there's some shame to that. But, you know, I just have to, you know, I just have to take what I've gotten from her, which was plenty. You know, I was able to meet her. I heard a lot about her story, and just move on. You know, we're still in touch, but you know, what I've learned in this whole process is you can't, whether you're, you know, cousins or brother and sister, or in this case, mother and son, you can't make people have a relationship with you. You know, she comes from a different culture, you know, I mean, England and, you know, all European, you know, countries are quite different from this country. So I just accept
there was probably some shame, is what it sounds like. There was some shame in there, and reliving it. You're so, I mean, we're so further along, and and the fact that now, and we can't speak for her, we don't have to stay on it, but you know, just the fact that you know, you're towards the later years of your life, this is an opportunity to, you know, redemption, and this is whatever there was. I think on your side, you'd have to understand what she was going through back then.
I do.
But now this is such a powerful moment that you would hope that you had a little bit more time to be able to go and spend with her and develop that bond. But she did provide you with information that led you to us kind of coming together today, and the fact that discovering who your dad is. So what did she right out tell you, or did she give you a lead? How did that work?
Well, the truth is, it didn't need to come from her, because what happened was when my brother did his you know, found his birth parents, both his father and his mother, I requested what's called non-identifying information, which is something that, you know, I believe all agencies, adoption agencies, kind of legally have to give to adoptees if they request it. It's supposed to be some, you know, a brief description of the parents and their circumstance of why you were put up for adoption. And so I did that in 2004, and it took, or 2003 rather, it took a year, but I got that information. And one of the key clues was that my father was a professional basketball player, is what my mother told the adoption agency. So right when, I mean, if you read the article, and hopefully Wally will, it's a long article, but it gives you all that information. Right when I read that, something just whispered in my ear and said, Wilt Chamberlain's your father.
Wow.
And I just knew it. And
Man.
I you know, I mostly because I knew how I looked, especially how I looked when I was about 20. And then all the facts kind of just lined up. I mean, he was the right age. He was in the Bay Area, which was where I was born at the time, 1965. And everything just kind of lined up. So I honestly didn't need my birth mother to tell me that he was my father. I figured it out on my own. It was just in talking to her, you know, she confirmed it. And then of course the DNA does the rest, you know.
Yeah. Wow. So Wally, 1965, you're already in the league, aren't you, by then? Are you with Philly yet?
I just got to the Baltimore Bullets.
Okay.
I graduated from university in 1964, 64-65 season. So I was playing with the Baltimore Bullets. One of the things, again, I guess in the first competition, he was playing. He must have been with the Warriors at the time.
Yeah.
I don't think that he was in Philly because Syracuse team moved to Philly. So I think if I competed against him, it had to be he was with the Warriors.
Yeah, I believe he moved with the Warriors to San Francisco.
That's
and
it.
I was conceived in, let's say April 1964 and born in January 65. So he was in San Francisco at the time. Yeah.
And then you guys would have been, so then you would have been reunited with Wilt the year after now, Wally.
Yeah, they had, matter of fact, the team from Syracuse, Hal Greer, Chet Walker, Al Bianchi. There's some of those Syracuse ball players, they moved the team to Philadelphia. And that's when they changed Philadelphia to, not the Philadelphia Warriors were there earlier. They went out to San Francisco Warriors, but they became the Philadelphia 76ers.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's when he was traded back to Philly.
He went back, yeah.
He went back to Philly because that's when I started 66, 67 season, from the Baltimore Bullets to the 76ers. So that was quite a reunion for us because here's somebody you looked up to and you played. I finally played against him. I'll give you a story. The reason why Wilt was so well known in not only the Philadelphia area, but the New York area, because he had a bar called Small's Paradise.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was a kid, from 12 years old to a college to pro, every summer they would take the best ball players up to New York to compete against the best in New York at each age group. So there are some years that he competed for New York. He actually played for the New York teams.
Right.
When the Baker League started, all the ball players that played in the Baker League, they had the all-star games of the ball players that come from New York to come down and play in the Rucker League, play against the Baker League. So it's sort of continued thing, but one of the biggest things for me as a young man was to go to New York and go to Small's Paradise. Our year that I played in 66, Wilt Chamberlain did not live in Philadelphia. He played in Philadelphia, but lived in New York.
Lived in New York, that's right. I know this story. I know this.
I'm going to give you a story. When he scored 100 points, I wasn't in the league then, but the players from the New York Knicks drove him back from Hershey, Pennsylvania to New York. But he would leave, he had insomnia. So he would drive from Philly after games back to his home in New York. When Alex Hannum came in 66, 67, he made Wilt get an apartment on the Parkway. One of the things that he did with Wilt was he wasn't going to drive back every night. I mean, he actually lived in New York and played for the Sixers. When Dolph Shaves.
That's
a
lot.
Now, one of the things about our team that Alex Hannum did, he didn't treat him as a prima donna. And one of the things that he taught us was he treated everybody the same. But one thing we had at our team was after games, our whole team would go to Pagano's. I'm talking about a whole team where we would have dinner. When we had Christmas parties, the whole team and their families did things together. So Alex Hammond brought us to where NBA players, even to when we would go to Boston, everybody thought that him and Bill Russell were bitter rivalries. There were rivalries on the court, but we would go out together.
Right.
I mean, we were friends.
Right.
We were friends.
I've heard that.
What I talked to Professor Skilling is that one of the things about when we went out, we would go out, but other times we would go to guys' houses, play chess, jazz. We sit around. I learned more when I got in the NBA about reading because we read more. We exchanged James Baldwin. We were college graduates, in other words.
Yes.
So college graduates, we sought the intellect because they call us brawn and no brains. That's why I love what Wilt tell us, dumb jocks, because we're African American. So what Wilt and guys are doing, we're well-versed, well-read, I should say. But we would go over, play chess, jazz. Of course, we would hang out like any ball players did during those times. We would go out and enjoy ourselves in different cities. But a lot of cities, we go to guys' houses, have a home-cooked meal. Or when we go to cities, what was so difficult for us was we would have to go across the track to go to a club or go to eat soul food. We would go out together. Now, Billy Cunningham said there are instances where we went in towns where we couldn't stay in the same hotel, but the coach wouldn't let us. Well, I experienced that at Villanova, even in 62, 63 in Maryland. But I'm giving you examples when we were pros, we would go out and white ball players would say, no, they wouldn't eat in a restaurant if you wouldn't serve their teammates. Billy said he was embarrassed and hurt as a white ball player that they wouldn't serve us. So I'm giving you a little background of what we went through as African Americans traveling around the country and where we had to go to eat or where we had to go out in Detroit, Century Club. We're mostly black clubs or black entertainment clubs where you see entertainment, have a good meal and go out. It's predominantly around your African Americans.
Aaron, have you heard some of those stories that Wally's sharing?
Oh, I have, because I've read, all the biographies, and I certainly, remember the stories of the segregation and the racism and all that. And one of the stories that the guy I worked with doing the article really kind of drove home was that early in Wilt's career, some, white ball player purposefully, rammed his elbow into Wilt's mouth and caused him to have some kind of impacted tooth thing, which was ultimately what he, and he, when he died, he ultimately died not because of the dental surgery, but he was getting that repaired, and somehow there was an infection or whatever. It ultimately, it was partially responsible for his death from what I heard. But yeah, it seemed that there's probably a lot of people who were just, beyond jealousy when it came to Wilt and his skills.
It was worse than jealousy.
Yeah. Well, it's racism. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, it's racism, but the violence that was on the court. And I'm going to tell you, he had a temperament. If he had retaliated a lot of times, he would have killed some of these ball players. Physically, I can't tell you about his physicality, not coming out of a game, the way he played, the way he weightlifted, what he ate. And even when we were out socially, he was not having a whole lot of women. We never saw him with a lot of women around him. See, the whole idea that in his books, what he said is that he wasn't that type of ball player that when we went out, it wasn't like that. He was very private. He was very, very private with whoever he had relationships with. And I couldn't even tell you because he was that private. I mean, we go out to clubs and see women, but the idea is that when you read his books to say what he experienced, it was in private. It wasn't that he was flaunting having women on his arms or women trailing him. I mean, we went out and partied, had fun, but it wasn't like that. Right. And I appreciated his privacy.
Well, Aaron, I think he's saying that number that's been thrown out there, it's probably a little bit embellished.
Oh, I believe that to be true. I've heard that from enough people in the family, and I've met a few people. I met his lawyer friend Cy Goldberg, and whatever. People like to talk, and that's fine. I know he had a lot of tales.
Aaron, that is so true. What you just said, whatever, because what guys do on the road, they do on the road. Whatever entertainers do, whatever people do is their business. So I never got into what was in the book, but I had an experience. Walt Hazard and I went over to his home. Of course, my best friend, I mean, we were raised, he raised us. He would give Hazard clothes and sneaks and take care of us when we were in Philly. And as I said, he came to all of our games. He was an inspiration to us because we wanted to have a record like he had in high school. Yeah. Now, these are guys that really would reach back and talk to you, would mentor you, would encourage you to be scholar athletes, to be able to get a free education. But one of the things when you went to his home, it was unbelievable the way his home was. I don't know if you've seen the Ebony magazine that's showing what his home looked like.
No. Yes, that particular home I've seen, sure.
It was magnificent. I mean, it was beautiful. The bed opened up, the skyline would open up. You like to touch the sky. It was on a mountain. Yeah. But that was his persona. He was a giant of a man, but a giant of a personality that cared for people. See, he wasn't that standoffish. He was communicative. He loved people. He could talk to anybody. But that's the type of personality he was. But I think it's important for you to know one of the things was his intelligence and how he was into bringing the community up. In other words, uplifting the community. He was a civil rights activist before, well, at the same time, Russell. You know what Russell was. I can't tell you what Russell went through was amazing because the way the people in Boston were, racist as they were, he played there and won. But what he went through when he grew up, where he came from, Louisiana, what he did in Frisco. So I always looked up to Russell for what he had to go through as a civil rights activist. But people don't know of Wilt's philanthropy. Give an example. When he was, when I was in Milwaukee, I went to see him play 3-man volleyball. You had to see his prowess because of shot putting, track.
That's pretty good. Yeah.
He was a when you say one of the greatest athletes that ever lived, but I'm not embellishing that. He was one of the greatest athletes and his power. But he was a gentleman because, as I said, the way they beat on him, if he had retaliated, he would have really hurt a lot of people. There are people in the stands in St. Louis that came out, spit or threw something at him, called us, and if he had retaliated, he could have killed with his physicality. I saw him, a guy tried to dunk, and he blocked the shot. A lot of times, I saw guys' shoulder pulled out with the power of him slamming a guy who was trying to dunk on him. So there are a lot of instances that I played with him all those years and see where he did not use his power to hurt anybody. Because if he physically, I mean, he was strong enough to knock you aside anyway. But what I appreciated again was his intelligence. And that's where I come in, where civil rights activists, Renaissance, and intelligentsia. He was an intelligent student at Kansas, but I cannot tell you how much he would tell us when he come watch us in high school, hit the books. You're there to be a scholar athlete. You're not here to play ball, but see, we all were poor. So he said, this could get you a vehicle to get out of poverty, to get an education. So I really appreciate talking with you because you're family. I mean, I talked to Michelle, Lena, I talked to Barbara. You know, I'm very close to Claude, who was he was an intricate part of helping kids all his life in the Baker League, Sunny Hill League. He was an intricate part of saving many, many young men and women. It was called Gross. That's he married Jelena. I call him. I mean, I would talk to them, excuse me, Michelle, maybe twice a week. We you know, with this new technology, texting each other or saying things. So it's good to talk with you. I'm sure we can continue this?
No, absolutely. I mean, I definitely want to do it again. I just got a text from Michelle just a few minutes ago. I did not know about this work that she did. I'm gonna have to call her and ask her about it.
She's an amazing woman. But all the whole family are amazing, but they're like family. See, there's a family in Philly that you go up and you can go over the house. Well, we were like when we grew up, we would go to each other's house, eat, other families take care of us, but they were always encouraging us. It was an extended family. Now, you do something wrong, my father would tell me at 108, the neighbor would tell us, I'm gonna tell you Jones boys better be respectful out here. Now, we were taught the golden rule, and that's the way his family was. Do unto others, you'd have them do unto you. Yeah. That's what we were taught.
I just wish I met the family earlier. You know, I'm just making up for lost time now. And it's, you know, everyone's on the older side now, including me. Oh, speaking of which, I have to ask you, you said you're Aquarius. I am also Aquarius. My birthday was on Wednesday. So when's your birthday?
Happy birthday.
Thank you. When is your
birthday to you?
Thank you. When is your birthday?
Well, I'll tell you what, the work that I do is who I am. I'm a humanitarian. My birthday is Valentine's Day.
Oh, nice. Perfect.
So I can't help it, Aaron. I can't help.
You can't help but feel the love, huh?
Yes, sir. Yeah. We should call him Wally. We should call him Wally Love, but we call him Wally Wonder.
well, here's what happened, Aaron.
Yeah.
Aaron, here's something that I want you to take from me about mother or father.
Yeah.
Love heals.
Yeah.
And whatever hurt you had in your life, to know who your parents are, love heals, but love rules. Yeah. So it'll overcome some of these things that you have felt, just finding out, because there are a lot of things my son does to me about ancestry.
Yes.
I'm finding out more about my ancestors. But see, one thing that we've learned in our family, with the Jones family, when there's a family reunion, you go back, and I'm finding out my father tells me more about my uncles, my aunts, my Aunt Edie in Atlantic City. She's 103, part Indian. I'm learning from him because I sit and talk with him, and his memory is so important to me to know who I am as a person. And the reason why I don't say I may have Indian blood, Scandinavian, I may have, my ancestry was done, and you have so much blood from all over. So I'm gonna give you something. You're from what Obama said. The race I belong to is the human race.
There you go. Yeah.
So remember that. Your family, brother. You're a brother.
That's it.
Thank
you're
you.
You're a brother to me, Curtis.
Oh, that's so awesome. I wanted to show you this. Oh, what's that?
What type of art? I got to find out a little more about your background. You went to Frisco for art. What type of art?
I went to the San Francisco Art Institute, and I studied printmaking. So I am mostly silk screener. I still do silk screen. So yeah, I've been doing that since, you know, the mid 80s.
Okay.
I mostly do t-shirts.
Where can we see some of your work?
Aaron, I tell you what.
I'll give you my website.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll give you that. I'll send that to you.
Aaron, yeah. Aaron, at 14, I went to art school.
You did?
I caught the L and everywhere. For 2 years, I went to art school.
What did you study?
I've done paintings. I do drawings. I've written a book called Black Champions, Challenge American Sports, with Jim Washington, who played with me at Villanova with the Sixers. So there's a book called Black Champions, Challenge American Sports.
Okay,
and it's by McKay. You can get it on Amazon.com. It's called Black Champions Challenge American Sports. It's about the history of athletes in the 1800s, jockeys, fencers, boxers, baseball. But it also talks about the lynchings and what happened politically. So my background is being an activist, and I could talk a little more about that, but we won't. What I'm going to do is send
part 2 and 3 and 4 until this pandemic is over and we can get together and.
Oh, absolutely. So you are co-authoring a book? Is that what's happening?
No, it came out in 72.
He's written a book already. Yeah.
Oh no, that book I got written down, but you are now putting Wally's stories in a new book. Very good.
Yes.
Very good. All right. Well,
we're going to text him some of the things about Kaepernick. We're going to text him some stories that I've had in reference to civil rights. So then they give you a little more background of who I am as an Aquarian. And I'd like to find out your website so know how your background of your artistry.
Yeah.
Your dad was learning how to play. Do you know what instrument he was trying to play at the end?
I've seen a picture of him with a guitar.
Yes.
Yeah.
He was learning how to play the guitar and saxophone. His last year. Yes.
Also, you had mentioned Baldwin. That's one of my favorite pictures of my father. The picture of him standing next to a wall with James Baldwin. It's such an awesome picture.
That's powerful.
Yeah,
that's
really
powerful.
Cool.
So Aaron, in closing, and then I mean, this is just closing for us right now. We'll come back and we'll do it again, and I'll share your number with Wally.
Sure.
Your side. Now that you've been involved in these last few years and you're hearing more of the stories, and I'm sure when you start to think about some of the things that you do and some of your antics and just your decision making and all, do you start to see similarities of yourself within your dad beyond the physical appearance?
I'm not sure. It's hard because that was one of the biggest shocks for me. Because my adoptive father was a huge basketball fan. So I knew the name Wilt Chamberlain when I was 3 or 4.
Wow.
Oh,
So there's a disconnect for me because I still sometimes have to force myself to accept that that guy that I knew about when I was 3 is my biological father. Yeah. So no, I don't. I mean, I'm not a good basketball player, although I never tried. So I don't even know if I'm a good basketball player.
Well, Wally had a chance to describe Wilt, and again, you've probably heard some of the stories, and then your adopted dad may have these same qualities as well, and we tend to embrace those that raised us, right? Yeah. But there's certain things that it's on your own. So I don't know if there's something that stands out that an antic or something.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm only learning really about him as a man. This is all kind of new to me. I read the books. But you read a book about someone who's writing about themselves. It's their version of themselves. So to hear Wally's stories and hear other people in the family, I'm getting a different perspective for sure. So I'm not sure what we would have in common. But I don't know if it really matters. You surprised me when you said he was kind of what did you say? He was kind of private in a way. He wasn't because I think the what people think of is that he was quite flamboyant and quite out there and quite full of himself. But I do get the sense that he was on the private side and didn't he liked to study and learn about other people as well. He wasn't just a big showman. I'm still learning. I'm still learning.
I love it. Well, we have to have there's your public self, and then there's your real self, and then the perceived or somewhere in between. So that's good that Wally's been able to share that with you and the family. And your journey is going to continue, and you're going to keep getting these, the stories. They're going to come to light. I'm going to send you a link of a show that Wally was on TNT just last week for Dr. King's birthday.
Okay, cool.
Show on TNT, and that's another story that we'll be able to share with you. But but it really speaks to Wally's activism coming about. And your dad, Wilt, was a big part of within that one particular event that we're talking about in terms of history. On that side, I'm referencing the year after they won the championship and the day after Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated, when they had to play in a game.
Oh, wow. I'd love to hear that story, but you can answer a question maybe for me. It was my father at his burial, Dr. King's burial? There's a picture of him that someone sent me that's from that era, and it's clearly a funeral, and I can't quite place who the person is being buried, but my first guess was that it was MLK. So I don't know if you know that.
Wally, you'd have to be. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, I'm not aware, but guys like those, like him and Russell, I could see them being there.
Okay.
But of course, with our schedule is pretty, we had to play.
Yeah.
So so I don't know whether that.
Well, the funeral was after, so he was assassinated on the 4th, and then he was buried later. They had to play on the 5th, the day after the assassination. Then the NBA gave them some time off, and then that was the mourning period, and they had the burial on that date before they would go take the next game, number 2, on it. So, but to hear there's so much behind that story that there was still controversy these years later, and TNT, the arena, ended up displaying the story, and they interviewed Wally last week for that live.
I'd love to see that. Yeah,
it's a big part that Wally and I are going to share in the book on, because there's been some research on it and and what was going on, but it's really when we relate it to Wally after that and what was going on in our world. From there on, that's the height of the civil rights movement. A few months later, you'd see somebody that Wally's had a chance to connect with later on in these years, Dr. John Carlos, the Olympic athlete. So in all this happening, around that time, Wally, his activism was being influenced. And, I know he's here right there, so he would tell you that's a whole other story that we'd have to spend more time on. But let's keep this going. Let's keep this dialogue going. Man,
absolutely.
I'm that you responded to the email, and I'm happy that Wally also agreed to kind of let's go ahead and let's all do this. And then, like you said, this is family now. So
that's right.
Wally's been family for me for almost my 20 years of knowing this guy. So I'm an extended light-skinned Indian brother with Wally to the islands. And we have a lot of, all of us on this call, we have a lot of similarities, man. And at the minimum, we're humans, and it's about love. It's about happiness. It's about self-discovery and what we're doing moving forward. So, man, thank you guys for both agreeing.
Both of you, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Wally. I hope
Thanks,
to talk
Aaron.
to you again.
All
yeah,
right,
and
man.
someday we will meet after the COVID.
Yes.
All right.
All right, brothers.
I'll say goodbye
Take
for
care.
now.